Thank you. Thanks, Kareem. When they called up and asked me to do this, I was quite pleased. I thought, wow, that's really nice. And then I realized that what they wanted was one of the old geezers to talk. And it turned out that I think the other old geezers were all playing golf, and I answered the phone. So that's why you get stuck with me. Okay. There are two major factors that influence the development, the existence and the development of Long Island. The first is geography, and that's obviously been talked about a lot. Long Island is terminal moraine. That means that the glaciers at the end of the last ice age scraped the surface all off of eastern Canada and New England and dropped all of that terroir here, okay? So we've got lots of terroir, it just came from somewhere else. What happened, and actually, I've got a sample. This is a mineral, and I'm gonna put it up here, and people can come by and smell it, and you can see what a Long Island mineral smells like. We're one big terroir sandbar. And what that means is we have really good drainage. And that's why we can grow grapes in an area that's really flat. Most places have hills and they need the water to run off. Our water just runs right down in. So that's why it works really well. Long Island, obviously being an island, is surrounded by water. And the two forks are very, very narrow. So you can't really get very far from the water at any time. What that does is temper our climate. In the winter, the open water keeps us warm, and we end up having a really mild winter, which is good for the grapes. In the springtime, the water is about as cold as it's going to get, and it retards the grapes so that bud break is late enough that we don't get frost. In the summertime, well, we get all that humidity. That's not so great. But what we do get is if any of the sailors in here know about something called the 4 o'clock hurricane. What that is a sea breeze that starts up in the afternoon, and it has to do with the difference in temperature between the water and the land. And you're guaranteed a breeze every afternoon. And what that does is put air circulation through the canopy, and that's really important for disease control. So that's a really good factor for growing grapes. And most important of all, in the fall, the water is as warm as it's going to get. And that keeps the temperature of Long Island really warm for a long period. And we have this really wonderful mild fall that lasts all the way up to Thanksgiving. And that's when we have time to develop fruit flavors and to ripen red tannins. So that also is very important for the grape growing. So what we've got is a region that's very conducive to growing grapes, but vinifera grapes do not grow on their own. So you need the other factor, which are people. And we've actually had several stages of people here. Kind of, the stages overlap, but we have sort of several stages. Let's see. Oh, this is just a picture to show that relationship with the water. You really can't get very far from the water, and that's a good thing. Okay, the first group of people on Long Island were the pioneers. Actually, in local parlance, they were called the nutcases. They came out here and started an industry in a place where no industry existed. And all the common wisdom was it wasn't going to work. Self-admittedly, I've talked to many of them, self-admittedly, they didn't have a clue what they were doing. But they made up for that completely with enthusiasm. These guys had a passion for what they were doing, an enthusiasm for what they were doing, and they had one really heavy-duty learning curve, and they established this industry. Back at that time, in the pioneer days, some of the pioneers had real jobs, and the grape and wine thing was on the weekends. They pretty quickly discovered that those are full-time jobs, and so they needed some help. So the second stage are the professionals. The professionals are full-time. They were educated in their field. They came to here having worked at other wineries or at other vineyards, and so they brought practical experience. This was the time in our history when things like hedging, leaf removal, The soil pH was corrected. The concept of having smaller crops and waiting for ripeness, those were all developed during this time period. So all of these things sort of came together, and we ended up with what I call the watershed year. 1993, basically all of Long Island's history is defined as before 1993 and after 1993. 1993 is basically when we all got our act together. So we're sitting out here, we're making these wonderful world-class wines, and we're scratching our heads trying to figure out why the world's not beating down the doors trying to get the wines. So what we need now is the third stage, the marketers. Okay, the marketers don't necessarily have wine background. They didn't know how to make wine, they didn't know how to grow grapes, but they had a very important skill. They could sell stuff. And it could be anything. It could be Merlot, but it could be rutabagas. It could be anything. They could sell stuff, and that's exactly what we needed, because we had these great wines that nobody knew about, and we had to get the word out, okay? This is not necessarily related to the marketing thing or whatever, but another phenomenon sort of happened on the wayside. At about this time, I think just the overall number of wineries and numbers of people in the industry got to such a large amount that we actually sort of saw a little reduction in the sense of community and cooperation. And I think that what happens is when an industry gets large enough, competition sets in. So that was a little bit disappointing, but it's something I think that's a normal part of growth of the process. Okay. Back to the relationship with water. I see a hint of another group of people, and it's not for sure a stage yet, but it's sort of showing up. I think there's another group of people that I'm going to call the garagistes. These are people that may be home winemakers. They have done things at home, and they see Long Island. They see that it can work. They see that wine can be done here. Businesses can succeed. And at this point, we have custom winemaking available. We have custom viticulture available. So what I see are people, home winemakers, that come out here and take the plunge, sort of like the pioneers. And these people have the passion, the interest, and are really excited about the wine. And I think that's something that's really exciting about our future. So I think that we've still got growth stages going on. And I think it's really good. At this point, I have to talk about a serious problem that Long Island has. We have an immigrant problem. This is a list of some of the nationalities that are represented in the Long Island wine industry. I don't know what's going on with this. If you go to France, the winemakers are all French. If you go to California, the winemakers all went to Davis. On Long Island, we are not homogenous. We have people with different background, really different cultural heritage, really different education. I think they had schools in Australia then. Russell, is he here or something? Now they do. Okay. Russell confirms now they do. But the thing is, what it is, we have really different backgrounds. So we've got a really varied group of people. And it's sort of like the American melting pot concept. You know, a whole lot of mixed groups of people with different attitudes and ideas is a healthy thing. It's not so good to be totally homogenous. All these people, new ideas, learn from each other. It's just great. I love it. Okay, now this diversity of people in the industry causes two different things. The first one is varietal chaos. Okay? This is a list of varieties. These are all being grown on Long Island, and I don't even guarantee that it's a complete list because not everybody wants to tell all the new varieties they're putting in and stuff like that. A lot of these are brand new varieties, new plantings, and the people I talked to were very excited. Everyone pretty much admitted and understood the concept that maybe not all varieties will ripen equally on Long Island. We have to try it to find out. But everybody was willing to give it a try and say, why not? Let's have fun. Let's try some other varieties. I think because of the European concept, the European model, a lot of people feel that a wine industry or a wine region naturally starts specializing. And after more time, you have fewer varieties and fewer varieties until you're totally specialized. Well, Long Island's evolving in the other direction, and I think it's pretty cool. we're trying out new stuff. I would rather be in an environment that's not rigid and that accepts experimentation. I think that's a whole lot more fun. It's more interesting. Okay. I think part of this non-conventional thinking, though, is possible because we have this wonderful fall climate. So in the vineyard, it's easy to be optimistic and say, well, why can't I ripen Albarino properly, or why can't I do Sangiovese? Once again, I might mention it again. Our wonderful fall climate is what really makes Long Island. Okay. Now, this is going to get more complicated. The other thing that diversity brings us is style chaos. I kind of have to define style first. The first concept of style is that flawed wine negates style. If you've got a wine with VA, Mercaptan, Brettanomyces, some major flaw, that's not a style, that's a flawed wine, okay? I would throw in unripe tannins, but as you can see, you start getting on slippery slopes if you start throwing in too much. So as a compromise, I would like to say that style begins when you don't have generally recognized flaws, okay? Now, style can be really simple or ridiculously complex. In the simplistic direction, my style is the way I make wine. That's it, plain and simple. When you're making wine, you're not thinking about a style. Style is the accumulation of all the decisions you make during the winemaking process. It's not a goal, it's a result, okay? It kind of just happens. And it doesn't have to have a name. You know, your style is just the way you make wine, okay? On the more complex side, there are a lot of people making wine all over the world. A lot of different people, a lot of different ways of making wine. But there tend to be some general trends in the techniques that people are using. And so we have concepts, we call those styles, just to confuse everybody. You can have Burgundian style, you can have Californian style, you can have reductive style, you can have oxidative style. These are sort of general accepted, they're generalizations, and they're accepted trends, and it's sort of used for communication so that we can talk to each other about style. The only problem about that is that absolutely no one fits into any one of those styles. What a winemaker usually does is picks and chooses amongst all the techniques that he has available. And so one year you may be Burgundian, and the next vintage with totally different grapes and different conditions, you'll do something totally different, okay? So that's a problem with style. In my opinion, a good winemaker simply makes wine that he or she likes. It's really that simple. You have to go out there and find agreement. You have to find people who like that style of wine. You have to maybe educate people to like that style of wine. But really what you want to do is go out there and just make wine that you like. I think it's a really serious mistake to try to make something for popularity because you think it's popular. I'll give you an example. After the phylloxera epidemic in California, there really was very little acreage of Merlot left in California. Merlot was becoming very popular. So what happened, a lot of Merlot got planted, a lot of high crops were taken off of very young vines, and the Merlot was pretty awful. And it really messed up the reputation of Merlot. So now what are you going to do? If you're trying to follow popularity, do you tear out that Merlot and plant Syrah real quick because it's getting popular? You basically can never catch up, you'll never get ahead, and you'll always be playing catch up with style because modes change all the time. So you really don't want to do that. You want to make a wine that you like and wait for everyone else to figure it out rather than try to chase everyone else, okay? Okay, let's get back onto diversity and style chaos. Once again, all these people on Long Island have different backgrounds, different ideas, different education, obviously different styles. In reality, no two winemakers can make the same wine, even if they tried, because there are so many decisions on a daily basis, and everybody has slightly different prejudices and ideas or whatever. Everybody's going to make different wines, so everybody's going to have their own style no matter what you can do. An interesting thing about style. Style is fluid. It changes and evolves. You always want to try something new. You want to learn something new. And the different vintages, of course, are a totally different. You start over every single vintage. But what we can do is, on Long Island, amongst all of us, we can taste each other's wines, we can talk to each other about what we did, how we handled the problem, and we learn from each other. So what that actually does is sort of gives us a feedback mechanism, okay, which actually sort of causes a convergence of style. We're sort of bringing our styles together simply by tasting each other's wines and saying, hey, that worked really well, I like that. And of course, everybody steals each other's techniques. That's just absolutely normal. So there's a convergence of style when we communicate with each other, okay? At this point, you should be thoroughly confused, I hope. Which means you're beginning to understand style, because it's not a simple thing. I'm going to go back and repeat the definition that I gave before. Style can be simple or ridiculously complex. It's almost as hard to define as that marketing term, terroir. It's almost as hard as that one. Once again, now we've got this huge diversity on Long Island, but there's another thing that we have in common, and it's a really powerful force. And I may have mentioned this before. It's our fall climate. That's really important. We have this wonderful, wonderful climate. It allows slow ripening, which develops fruit flavors, lots and lots of fruit, and it allows us to get ripe tannins. We pretty much all agree that those make nice wines. So an emerging Long Island style, I think there's a respect for the vineyard and this respect for this wonderful ripeness that we get in our fall climate. I'm starting to see more and more wines that are fruit forward. We're not covering them up with lots of other characters. It could be because barrels cost $1,000 now, and that's kind of ridiculous. In general, alcohols are not too high. Acids are not too low. Once again, that's due to our really mild fall climate. What I think on Long Island, a style is developing on Long Island, is we are making full-flavored, balanced wines. And what else do you want, really? That's really all we want to be doing. Okay, I want to change things up a lot here because lecturing people is really boring. So could we pour the first wine? I'll take questions while they pour the first wine, but here's what I want to do. We're going to pour like one wine every 10 or 12 minutes now, so we're going to have them coming at you pretty quick. What I want you to, yep.
Can you repeat the question if anyone asks?
Yep, okay. What I want to do is we're going to taste the wine, and I want people to comment on the wine. I want everybody to talk to me about the wine. Tell me what you're tasting, what you think about the wine. And then I'm going to call on the winemaker responsible for this wine and ask him what he's trying to do and whether he thinks he accomplished it, okay? So while we're waiting for the first wine, are there any questions? Thank you. Yep. I got everybody confused, huh? Cool. The first wine is a 2005 Riesling from Peconic Bay. (2005) was looking to be an absolutely wonderful year. It was warm, sunny, relatively dry, but we had the moisture we needed. And then the monsoons hit. I think that most people had at least the white wines in. I'm not sure about all the reds. Some were, probably some weren't. But the monsoons hit. The very, very ripest grapes kind of fell apart, exploded in the vineyard because 8 inches of rain, or 17 inches of rain is a lot. We got the wines in, and they're actually turning out to be very nice wines. In my personal situation, they're nice wines, but they're wines that I would never have made. Because what happened, after the rain stopped, we waited about 3 days for everything to dry out, for the sugars to get back up, for the water to get out of the grapes. At that point, they were already starting to break down a little bit, and so we just brought them in as fast as we could. And I didn't pay attention to varietal. Is there anyone from the ATF here? No. Okay. I didn't pay attention to varietal because it was just a matter of getting in as many as you could before they fell apart. So I made some strange field sort of blends that I might not have done otherwise. Once again, I think the wines are really nice. They're just different. They're not my style, but I guess they are because they're my style for that year. Okay. Okay, we're tasting the first wine. Does anybody want to tell me anything about this wine?
Lots of acid.
Pardon me?
Lots of acid.
Lots of acid. Lots and lots of acid. Mineral. And this is Long Island. I don't know if we can we have mineral? Okay, yep. A little what? Quiet on the nose, okay. These wines were they're all just hauled down here and thrown in a bucket of ice, so they're shook up a little bit. That could do that. Citrus. We're fruit. We're getting fruit. Does anybody smell, wet concrete or any other mineral like that? Petrolly. Petrolly. Okay. All right. Greg, what were you trying to do? Come on, you're a professional.
Eric let the cat out of the bag. Larry Fine is my father. Basically, Charlie Hargrave does a really good job in the vineyard. He brings me ripe fruit from healthy vines, and I pretty much try not to mess it up. Pretty much, because the aromatic constituents in the must are odorless, when I'm keeping track of the Riesling, I pay more attention near the end of the fermentation because it's going from these fruity tropical components to more of the citrus. I get a lot of grapefruit, you get some apricot later, and so I'll generally arrest the fermentation. It seems that with this particular clone, the last several years I've arrested it closer to 1%. We're dry farmed on the Chardonnay we grow, so I get a lot of petrol in dry, warm years. So I'm pretty much just trying to preserve that kind of fruit and just keep it out of that, fruity stage and go for the grapefruit. And as you can tell, I like acid. I like to have that acid backbone because I want it to balance the acidity. This wine is about 5 grams per liter residual sugar. I've done Swiss Reserve in past years, and I didn't like it as much.
Yeah.
I prefer having the fructose from the arrested fermentation. It's an unknown clone. Rob Hansel planted. He said it's a suitcase clone, snuck over. But it's very hard, and like I say, Charlie does a great job because it's, as most of you that grow Riesling know, it really wants to rot. We have to leave pulling from both sides of the fruit zone, and we actually tolerate a certain amount of rot, and when you see it's just starting to go, then you have to pick. And I just pretty much handle real carefully, whole cluster press, hand pick, and just try not to tear the skins and pull out the phenols because I don't like.
Okay, go ahead and dump that wine because we're going to start pouring another. Greg, you can keep talking. That's fine. You keep talking, but go ahead and dump your wine so we can get the next one going. We're going to do 5 wines, so we kind of have to kick them out here.
One of the notes is interesting. When Gunther tasted with me, we did 98 to 07, and he noticed a change from like 02 and 03 on, and I sort of attribute that to Charlie coming on in 01 and the vineyard improving quite a bit because the fruit improved. And so I'm just trying to stick with the quality of the fruit that I get. I don't like to manipulate. I'm not into PVPP and a lot of finance. Yeah. 8.8 was the acid on this, and the pH I think was like 3.2. Yeah. And this clone does build a lot of sugar. I'm lucky if I get bricks over 20. It just doesn't build a lot. I'm actually picking more on the ripeness and the rot level. I remember in 05, Kip said, I don't know what to do. There's no rot. I can't pick yet.
Okay, the second wine is Tokai Friuliano from Channing's Daughters. Does anybody want to say anything else about the Riesling? Nope. Really good. Really good. That's nice. That's good enough. Okay, whoever started with the Tokai Friuliano, let's go. Let's talk about it.
One more comment about the Riesling.
Okay.
It's a great wine with striped bass schnitzel.
Okay? John says striped bass schnitzel. Anybody that's making that tonight, this is the wine.
Okay, Christopher. What's the question?
What did you do and did you succeed? What were you trying to do and did it work?
Well, I think ultimately what we try to do with just every wine is make a delicious, expressive wine, first and foremost. Something that people will enjoy and bring them pleasure. That's our primary goal. From a more technical point of view, or however you want to phrase it, I think the other ultimate goal is a purity of variety and the purity of the expression of the place. And I hope we did. I hope that it's reflective of Tokai Friulano in an expressive, pure way. And I hope it's reflective of our terroir and our place on the east side of Long Island. That's what I hope to do with it.
What kind of fruit flavors are we getting? Grapefruit. Maybe a little lime? Citrusy? Yeah. We get fruit. That Long Island gets fruit. That's what we get with this beautiful fall with the slow ripening. Slow ripening gives you fruit. So we always have fruit, 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 fruit. That's what we're looking for. Okay, we can go with the next one. I told you we'd be pumping them out. We have a question over here, Christopher. Why did you plant Tokai Friulano?
I think that, well, I have an interest in that too, but I think that actually Larry Green and Alice Y should sort of answer that because of the experience that we've had with the wonderful resource of the Cornell Cooperative Extension and the research vineyard there, and being able to experiment with varieties, with Larry being the first technical. Cornell is a huge asset, and it doesn't get the play that Davis gets, and it's just as important, if not more, in my opinion, in some senses. And it's a huge resource that we should all use, not only in New York, but in the country and in the world, too, the research that happens. And Larry was the first research viticulturalist down here, and Alice runs the program with her assistant living now, and a lot of what we saw there, and Larry's experience there, showed us that these grapes would have potential here, and that spurred us to do that.
Okay, this wine is 2008 Chenin Blanc from Pomenac. 2008, yeah. Kareem bottles early. Okay, now, do we have any comments about the Chenin Blanc? Yep.
This is not a Winemaker. This is not South Africa.
No, this is Long Island.
Thank you for it.
John.
It smells like crushed oyster shells.
Crushed oyster shells, John says. Orange peel? Okay, is there a question up here? Nope. Okay, the next wine is a 2005 Gewürztraminer from Lenz. Does anyone have anything nice to say about it?
Classic, expressive, lychee, rose, spicy, extremely fragrant aromas.
Now for the unpaid first.
To me, Gewürz, a shy Gewürz is not a Gewürz. A Gewürz has to sort of be in your face. You really want very expressive flavor. You want big flavor. You want robust flavor. If it's really shy, I mean, this one is a heavy one. 2005 was a warm year, so it's maybe a little heavier than average. But it should be a big wine. It should be a robust wine. I start off in the vineyard. I'm tasting grapes in the rows. And if I go down a row and taste 20 grapes, until 20 grapes taste like Gewürz, it's not ready yet. It's just not ready yet. Until you get that flavor, it's not worth picking, okay? Then I do everything I can to express that flavor. I'm using yeast that accentuate aromatics, okay? Very cold fermentation, basically 1 degree brix per day, so it takes about 3 weeks. And that's about it. That's really all I want to do to it. At that point, I settle it, clarify it, filter it, and bottle it. A little tiny bit. To me, it's varietal for a Gewürztraminer to have a little tiny bitterness in the finish. It can be almost cloying, almost sweet. because all that fruit, it seems almost too sweet. If it doesn't, it's sort of like the hops in beer. You need a little bit of bitterness to try to dry out the sweetness. So it gets a couple hours of skin contact, that's enough. I don't really want harsh bitterness. I've had Alsatian ones that tear the back of your throat out. That's a little carried away.
How do you guys stay happy?
Pardon me?
How do you guys stay happy?
Add acid. Gewürztraminer, once again, you're waiting in the vineyard until it's ripe. And until you get that flavor, it's not Gewürz. When the Gewürz comes in, the pH is 4. It's like peanut butter. Okay? That's not going to make a good wine. That's totally, totally, totally unstable. So I add acid. Sorry. Yep.
What's your opinion of putting a little Gewürz in the Chardonnay to spice it up?
I never have enough to spare. Okay? He asked about putting Gewürz in Chardonnay, and I don't have enough to spare. I keep it all in Gewürz.
We've had 4 different white wines,
Yep.
all different varietals.
Yep.
There is absolutely continuous aroma and flavor throughout the wine. Is that one right?
Fruit forward.
It's very, the food is you tell us.
Yeah.
But there's a smell, and I'm trying really hard to define it. And it has some, it brings back a memory for me that has to do with bees, like beeswax or something else. I haven't pinpointed it exactly, but there's something that's continuous. Both today, it's imported white wine from here, and the other wines that I've tried. And it's been both continuous to the whites and to the reds. It's the same aroma and flavor.
We might have a terroir, huh? Actually, does anyone taste potatoes? We used to get that a lot. Okay, we can take the last one. We're good to go. We've got enough time, so we're going to rinse. Because Gewürz is really powerful and has a big effect on the next wine. So we're going to go down the rows real quick and rinse your glasses.
I have
A question.
Each wine is beautiful. Each one is better than the next. How did you pick these 5 wines?
I like them. I like them.
What were you trying to show everybody?
Well, one thing I want to show that. I want to show all the different varieties that are available. So I was picking things a little bit more obscure. But not really obscure, but I mean not quite the normal run-of-the-mill things. But these are wines that I personally like. And they're maybe considered minor varieties, but they're wonderful wines. And I really want to encourage more of this. You know, let's do more varieties. Let's go ahead and evolve in the wrong direction. We don't have to go in the same direction as everyone else. It's fun. Marketing. We're not allowed to talk about marketing. That's all we've done. Some of these varieties, admittedly, are not done as varietals. Some of them are small plantations that get blended away into other varieties. But the thing is, they're here, and we're experiencing them, we're trying them, we're seeing if they grow, we're looking at the potential. So there's still hope for the future for a lot of these. And there are more varieties that can be tried. There are a lot more varieties out there. The thing about terroir, I have to do it. I have to do it. Basically, when you make wine, it expresses a flavor, some sort of flavor. All of the whole process that makes the wine, all the way from the grapes, you know, from the rootstock, from the vines, from the soil structure, from the amount of rainfall, you get everything like that, everything all the way up to the final product, expresses a certain set of flavors, okay? And when you get that set of flavors in your wine, you go out and market it. That's terroir. That's what's going on. There are no minerals transposed into the vine, nor are there, what did we have? We had grapefruit, we had pineapple, we had lemon. None of those were involved in the fermentation. These are flavors that appeared from the grape precursor through the fermentation. We got these flavors, and we simply identify them through our own senses as those flavors. They weren't really caused by peaches or whatever, okay? Now, you've got this wine with this set of flavors. You want to sell it to the world, so of course we all go out and say these are wonderful flavors. That's the whole concept. Okay, some of you may be shocked to find out that Long Island makes red wine. Are there any comments about this wine? The nose is spectacular. Any other comments? This is not a variety that's normally made as a varietal. It tends to be blended more often than not. There are Petit Verdots out there in the world, but in most cases it's a blender. I prefer to blend it with Cabernet Sauvignon. I think it fits really well. Not as racy. Okay. Any other comment? Okay, where's Rich? Rich?
What I try to do is here really pull out pure expression of North Port terroir.
Okay.
He's a marketer.
No, I'm a winemaker. I'm a big believer in terroir. But that's what makes winemaking so great, because there's lots of different opinions. But I think, first and foremost, this is a wine that is a tribute to the vineyard manager at SBU in 2005, Ben Sisson, because, as Eric mentioned, it was a very difficult season in that we had 20 inches of rain at the beginning of October. This crop wasn't picked until the second week of November, and the fruit was absolutely perfect and beautiful. So it's also a compliment to Petit Verdot in that it's a really tough variety, both in its hardiness in the field, its ability to withstand different areas and cold temperatures, and also from the list on the screen that Eric has, probably one of the last ones to ripen. So we don't really have to worry about over-ripening Petit Verdot. So, pulling them back before they get too ripe is not one of my issues. I'm really trying to push the envelope with the variety, push it against the wall, so to speak, and try to get as much ripeness as possible, every ounce of summer out of that season I can into the grapes. And so I'm really trying to get a lot of fruit, not hide in the nose. There is 5% Merlot in this. It's a really small production, and it was all treaded because the grapes are too small to go through my crusher. So it was all treaded in small open top ferment.
Let's talk about the thread that's Long Island. My idea was full flavored, balanced. Do these wines work? I think they do. No, nothing else? Nobody? Where can I buy it? All the wineries are here. They're all local. Yeah, they are. That's a problem. Okay, that's it. Okay, thank you.